Today I will be talking about the ordeal. That is also the crisis in the movie, is the moment in which the hero faces the darkest hour. That could be death, it could be a big failure, the end of a relationship, the physical, emotional death, the facing his own most terrible fears, and often the hero survives and is born transformed, improved in a way. Examples of this change we can see in Rango, that is caught as a fraud, has to go away from the village, goes through the desert, almost dies until he remembers and finds a solution to the crisis of the community and comes back stronger. In Toy Story 3, we see the gang completely almost burnt in a trash facility. They're holding tight together, eventually are saved and become stronger and more united. In The Martian, he creates a greenhouse to produce his own food. All of a sudden, he's in the greenhouse and the place explodes. He's almost perished. And then when he comes back all burnt up, he realizes he has to find a way to escape Mars faster, and it gets better at planning that way. So important is to specify that the crisis is not the climax. I was confused about that until this lecture. I now know that the crisis builds up to the climax. So the ordeal is the darkest hours of the hero, is when we see them really at the, almost dead, if not dead, and then when we find out they survived is when the climax occurs, oftentimes, where there's even a more a stronger hero, in quote. So the ordeal is the crisis in which hostile forces are in the tensest state of opposition. Climax is the crowning event of the whole movie. Oftentimes is an act. The ordeal is oftentimes in Act 2, midway, but it also can be delayed to the end of Act 2 or the beginning of Act 3. That I think actually works better that way. And the climax is generally in Act 3, after the build-up of Act 2. So every story needs a crisis moment that conveys the ordeal sense of death and revival. Example is in Dorothy, in which she finds herself inside the lair of the witch. She's threatened to be killed, and Hourglass is counting her last moments. That's the crisis. We fear for her. Is she going to survive the witch's lair? But that leads to the climax, that is her friends come and rescue her. She finds renewed strength, battle the witch, kills her, and comes out with a broom. In the Green Book, the big crisis is when the two characters fully go in confrontation, verbal confrontation about race, about racial, approach, how they approach their race, their own races. And they fight, but that fight leads to this great compassion that then takes us to the climax, when the protagonist quits, cannot go on anymore, is exhausted, and the other person takes on. They're stronger, they're united. Racial barriers are broken. That's the climax. Now, another important figure is the witness. We are watching the hero's darkest hour, the almost moment of death, through the witness eyes. So the witness is a really important figure. I have couple examples here. In Ponyo, that is a little fish that wants to be a girl too, because she's in love with the Sosuke. They go on a trip to reach the mother's retirement home, and Ponyo at a certain point is almost running out of her time as human. She's turning more and more into a fish, kind of dying as a human. Sosuke is watching. In Arthur and the Invisible, Arthur and his grandpas transform at the beginning and at the end of the movie. At the beginning from humans to minimoids, and at the end from minimoids to human, and that transformation involves the death of the human or the death of the minimoids, all watched by a bunch of beautiful characters. In Zootopia, the fox gets shot by the villain, that is the sheep, the secretary of the mayor. The bunny is standing there watching the whole way, and when we realize the bullets are blueberry and the fox is back. So the hero and death is very important, and the hero can be the witness of death, can cause death, can face death, and can appear to die. In every story, you have to lift the audience, raise their attention and their awareness, heighten their emotions. Emotions, in fact, are, when they're depressed by the presence of death, then they rebound in an instant even higher than before, just like a ball that you put underwater. Another thing to consider is the idea that the villain, the antagonist, the enemy, could be actually the shadow of our protagonist, of our hero. So all these could be the negative possibilities of the hero himself, his own shadow. In order to do that, we need to do something called demonization. That is, take the flaws and the fears of the hero and turn them into, and project them into another figure that becomes the demon, that becomes the villain. But we can consider the villain on his own a hero, right? It's actually the hero's shadow, it's the hero's negative sides. Other possibility for the ordeal is when the villain actually escapes death. That can happen. So in the crisis, the villain and the hero can be confrontational. The hero does not succeed in defeating the villain. And in Act 3, maybe in the climax, is when the villains come back and the confrontation occurs again with the villain defeated, maybe. So each villain is a hero of his own story and is fighting with our hero. Another thing that can happen is the hero cheats death, is almost to die, but it doesn't, or it gets a gift. The author talks about mythological heroes that generally get a magical gift that gets them out of dying. For example, the Ariadne's thread that allows her lover to get out of the labyrinth. That is a powerful bond, is the representation and symbol of love, of the bond that we have, that the hero has with his loved one. So even if he's almost to die, that bond is like an elastic band that brings him back to earth, to life. Lastly, and a little bit online with what I just said, we can have crisis of the heart. That is, a ordeal that has, in a crisis that has to do with a relationship, love. We could have something called the mystic or sacred marriage within a person as well. That means the positive and the negative, the feminine and the masculine side of the hero can be kind of in a perfect balance. The negative is, the feminine is called anima, the masculine is called animus. So during the crisis, the hero must get in touch with all aspects of his or her personality. So we could find the state of balance, this sacred marriage that represent the hero's total mastery of life, where things are fully harmonious. But this can also be a sacred breakup, where a deadly war might arise from the dueling hero males and females sides. So that's another possibility for the crisis. Other possibilities are, for example, the going psycho. There's what Hitchcock only with his genius could achieve. That is pretty much kill the protagonist, the hero, midway into the movie and force the audience to look at things through the assassin, through the villain's eyes. So again, this comes back to the idea that the villain can be his own hero, a hero on its own. Other ordeal can be related to how we deal with our figures of authority or our parents. The Godfather and Finding Nemo is another example of that, and that's also generally a big generator of a great big tension and crisis. Thank you so much.